The collapse in the snow. The cold wind howled across the frozen land. Snow covered everything, trees, rocks, and the narrow path that led to the human's small cabin. His name was Daniel. He had lived alone on this icy alien planet for many months, working as a mechanic for mining ships. Life was quiet and cold. But that evening, something strange happened. Daniel was bringing firewood back to his cabin. His boots crunched through deep snow. The sky was gray and the wind made it hard to see. That's when he saw it. Something moved and fell in the distance. At first he thought it was just a pile of snow falling from a tree. But then he saw it again. Something small and weak, crawling, then collapsing. He dropped the wood and ran toward it. As he got closer, he realized it wasn't human. Lying in the snow was a thin, alien girl, barely conscious. Her skin was pale lavender and her long silver hair was tangled and frozen. She wore nothing but torn cloth and her feet were bare, red from the freezing cold. Her breathing was slow. Her lips were blue. Daniel knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" She opened her eyes just a little. They were large and glowing, like liquid silver. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. She was starving, freezing, dying. Without thinking, Daniel picked her up in his arms. She was so light, like carrying a child. Her body was ice cold. "Hang on," he whispered. "You're gonna be okay." He rushed back to his cabin, kicking the door open and laying her near the fire. He wrapped her in every blanket he had. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Her fingers were stiff, her body shaking. Daniel grabbed a metal pot and boiled water for soup. Then he looked at her again. Up close, she looked young, maybe his age or younger. Her face was sharp but soft. Her eyes were closed now and her chest rose slowly. He fed her a spoon of warm soup. At first she didn't react. Then her lips moved just a little, and she swallowed. "There you go," Daniel said gently. "You're safe now. You're not alone." He placed a warm towel on her feet, careful not to hurt her. They were swollen and cracked. Who was she? Why was she out there alone? After some time, her breathing became more steady. She was still too weak to talk, but she opened her eyes again, and this time, they looked right at him. "Don't worry," Daniel said, smiling softly. "I won't hurt you." Her eyes filled with water. A tear rolled down her cheek. Suddenly, her thin hand reached out and grabbed his wrist, not hard, just enough to stop him. Her voice was a whisper, broken and weak. "Don't leave me." Daniel froze. He looked into her eyes. There was fear, pain, and something else, hope. "I won't," he said. The storm outside grew louder. Snow hit the windows, but inside the fire crackled and the room was warm. He sat beside her all night, keeping the fire strong and watching over her. She didn't let go of his wrist even as she slept, and Daniel? He didn't move. Something told him his life was about to change forever. The firelight awakening. The fire cracked softly in the quiet cabin. Snow still fell outside, but the storm had passed. The sky above was now a pale orange just before sunrise. Daniel hadn't slept. He sat beside the girl all night, watching the rise and fall of her chest. She was alive, but fragile, like glass. Her skin was no longer blue. Her face had some color now. The warmth was slowly returning to her body. Her hand still held his wrist even while she slept. Then, her fingers twitched. Daniel sat up straighter. Her eyelids moved slightly, then slowly opened. Silver eyes met his. She blinked, confused and scared. "Hey," Daniel said softly. "You're safe. You're in my home." The alien girl looked around. She saw the fire, the blankets, him. Her body tensed. Daniel quickly raised his hands. "It's okay. I didn't hurt you. You collapsed in the snow and I brought you here." She tried to sit up but winced in pain. Her body was too weak. Easy, Daniel said, placing a pillow behind her back. Don't push yourself. The girl looked down at her hands. They were bruised and thin. Her arms had faint marks, red lines like old cuffs or rope burns. Daniel noticed, but didn't say anything. He didn't want to scare her more. She opened her mouth. Her voice was dry, broken. Why, where? Planet Hadean 6. Northern sector, he replied. Mining outpost. You were outside in a snowstorm. Alone. Her eyes widened. She said, something in her own alien language, a mix of clicking sounds and breathy whispers. Then she closed her eyes in frustration. Daniel stood and came back with a metal cup. Try this. Warm broth. She looked at the cup like it might hurt her. Daniel smiled. Here, watch. He took a sip to show her it was safe, then gently held the cup to her lips. Slowly, she drank. One sip, then another. Her eyes didn't leave his. When she finished, her hands trembled again. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her body, clearly, still cold. You don't have to talk if you're scared, Daniel said. Just rest, I'll keep the fire going. She didn't answer. But then, her lips moved. Name, she whispered with effort. He blinked. Me? I'm Daniel. She nodded slowly, then pointed a shaking finger to herself. Zura, she said. Daniel repeated it gently. Zura. She gave a tiny nod, like she was surprised he could say it. For a while they just sat in silence. The fire warmed the room, but her eyes kept darting to the window. She was afraid. What happened to you? Daniel asked softly. Why were you out there? Zura looked down. Her fingers curled into the blanket. Then she looked at him and slowly moved her arms, showing the faded red marks. She tapped her wrist, miming something snapping. Chains. She had been a prisoner. Daniel's heart sank. Someone had kept her locked up. She had escaped into the freezing wild. No food, no shoes, no help. You ran away, he whispered. And no one came after you? Zura didn't answer, but her eyes said everything. Then, suddenly, a sound. Knock, knock. Daniel stood up, startled. Someone was at the door. Zura's whole body went stiff. Her breath caught in her throat. She pulled the blanket over her head, hiding her face. Daniel whispered, Stay here. He grabbed his old mining rifle from the wall and crept to the door. He opened it slowly, but no one was there. Only wind, only snow. But in the distance, barely visible, were deep footprints in the snow. Not human. Three-toed, heavy, leading away into the forest. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He shut the door and locked it tight. Then he turned to Zura, who peeked out from the blanket. Someone was here, he said. Her face turned pale. Hunter, she whispered. They found me. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at her. This strange, beautiful creature who had nearly died in his arms. Now she was being hunted, but he wasn't going to let them take her. Not now. Not ever. Footprints in the snow. Daniel stood at the window long after the knock. The snow had covered most of the prints now, but the shape, he couldn't forget it. The toes were long, sharp. Not human. Not even close. Whoever came wasn't just curious. They were hunting something. Or someone, Zura. He turned to look at her. She was still wrapped in the thick blankets, her silver eyes barely showing through. She hadn't moved much, but her breathing had changed. Shallow. Fast. Fearful. They're looking for you, aren't they? Daniel asked quietly. Zura gave a tiny nod. Her hand clutched the blanket tighter. Daniel knelt beside her. Can they track you? Did you leave anything behind? She hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, she touched a spot behind her ear, then pressed in. A tiny silver shard popped out. It was glowing faintly red. Daniel reached out. Is that a tracker? Zura dropped it into his hand. Yes, she whispered. They always know. Without a second thought, Daniel walked to the fire and tossed the tracker in. It sparked, hissed, then melted in the flames. You're not theirs anymore, he said firmly. You're safe here. Zura stared at the fire wide-eyed. No one had ever protected her like that before. That afternoon, Daniel searched the forest around the cabin. He didn't go far, just enough to spot signs. The footprints led to the ridge. From there, they split, like 2 or 3 beings had, spread out, circling. But there were no bodies, no gear, no visible ship. They were watching, waiting. He returned to the cabin, bolting the door behind him. He even sealed the windows with spare panels. Inside, Zura had moved closer to the fire. She was curled on the rug, her head resting on her knees. When she saw Daniel, she sat up quickly, alert. You're okay, he said with a small smile. Didn't go far, just scouting. Zura pointed to the sealed window. Danger? Not yet, Daniel answered. But they're close. Her hands began to tremble. She muttered something in her language, quick and sharp, full of fear. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. He walked over and knelt beside her. Zura, who are these people? Why do they want you back? She hesitated. Then, slowly, she drew on the dusty floor with her finger. A circle inside it, a symbol like a crown. Then a small figure inside the circle, and chains around it. Daniel frowned. A prison? She nodded, then pointed to herself. You were a prisoner? She paused, then shook her head. She drew again. This time a group of tall figures holding weapons. Below them many small ones. Then she circled her small figure again. It clicked. You're royalty? She didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears. Daniel sat back, stunned. You're someone important. Zura looked down. Not anymore, she whispered. They say I'm broken. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. You're not broken. You're alive. And you're strong. She looked at him, really looked at him. And for a moment her lips almost smiled. Then, crack, a loud sound outside. They both jumped. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Stay here. He opened the cabin door slowly. Snow swirled in the wind. At first, he saw nothing. But then, deep in the tree line, he spotted it. A glowing orb. Floating. Watching. A drone. It hovered silently. Red light blinking. Then it moved. Fast. Flying away before he could shoot. Daniel cursed and ran back inside. They know where we are, he said. They'll come soon. Zura's eyes filled with panic. She stood up, but her legs were weak and she fell. Daniel caught her. You're still healing, he said, but I'll protect you. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. Why? She asked. I'm not your kind. Daniel looked at her, then gently tucked a loose silver strand of hair behind her ear. You were dying in the cold. No one should be left like that. I don't care what planet you're from. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since she collapsed in the snow, she smiled. The hunters arrive. The air had changed. It was no longer just cold. It was heavy, as if something dangerous was getting closer with every breath. The fire inside Daniel's cabin burned bright, but even its warm light couldn't erase the tension that now filled the space. Zura sat near the corner, her knees pulled to, her chest eyes staring at the wooden door as if it might burst open any second. Her silver hair hung over her face, hiding the fear she couldn't speak. Daniel checked the power cells on his rifle again, fully charged. He looked out through a small gap in the window panel. Nothing but snow and trees, but he could feel it. Something was out there. Zura stood slowly and walked to him, and walked. Her voice was a whisper. They come. Daniel didn't ask how she knew. He believed her. It started with a strange sound, like a hum. Then a flash of blue passed over the window. A second drone. Sleeker than the first. Faster. It scanned the cabin with a soft pulse like a radar. Daniel raised his rifle. Zura grabbed his arm. "No," she said, eyes wide. "They'll know. More will come." "They already know," he replied, stepping outside into the snow. The drone hovered just above the roof. Daniel fired. Crack! The bolt hit the side of the drone. Sparks flew. It let out a sharp whine and darted into the trees, smoking. Then silence. Zura ran to the doorway. "Now they will come fast." Daniel turned back. "Let them. I'm ready." They didn't have to wait long. As the sun dipped behind the icy hills, 3 dark shapes moved through the trees. They were tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in black armor that shimmered with green lines. Their faces were covered with masks, red eyes glowing like coals. Zura froze when she saw them. "Hunters," she whispered. "From the syndicate." Daniel placed his hand on her shoulder. "Get inside, stay low." One of the hunters raised a hand, signaling to the others. They began to spread out, slowly circling the cabin like wolves. Daniel stepped forward into the snow. "This is private land," he shouted. "Turn around and leave." The leader spoke in a deep, metallic voice. "Return the property, human. This is not your concern." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's not property." "She is marked," the hunter growled. "Syndicate, law. Surrender her, and you may live." Zura trembled behind the doorframe, clutching a broken chair leg like a weapon. Daniel took a deep breath. "No." The hunter's red eyes flickered. "Then you will die for a slave?" "I'll die protecting someone who deserves better than chains." The moment hung still in the air, then, boom! A flash grenade hit the snow near Daniel's feet. He rolled aside, barely dodging the stun wave. A second later, the hunters charged forward, weapons glowing. Inside the cabin, Zura's eyes flared silver. She screamed, not in fear, but in fury. And something exploded. The sky lit up white-blue as a wave of energy burst from the cabin. It hit the ground like a shockwave, sending 2 of the hunters flying. The third was pushed back, but managed to stay standing. Daniel looked up, stunned. Zura stood in the doorway, her eyes glowing, her arms stretched out. Her body shook from the effort. Sparks danced along her skin. She collapsed to her knees. The last hunter raised his weapon and aimed at her. Crack! Daniel fired. The shot hit the hunter in the chest. He staggered, fell, and didn't get back up. Silence returned. Smoke floated in the cold air. The snow was scorched black in places. The cabin's front wall was cracked and smoking. Daniel rushed to Zura and caught her just before she hit the ground. You had power this whole time?" he asked. She looked up weakly. "Not control. Only when I'm scared." He held her gently. "You saved us." She shook her head. "No, you saved me. First." Daniel looked around at the ruined front yard, the fallen hunters, the quiet stars above. He knew this wasn't the end, but he also knew one thing for sure. He wasn't letting her go. Her real name, snowflakes, drifted gently onto the bodies of the fallen hunters. The wind had calmed. The night was still. Inside the half-damaged cabin, the fire burned low, casting long shadows. Daniel sat by Zura's side, holding a damp cloth to her forehead. She was breathing, but her body was weak, trembling from the energy burst she had unleashed. He had never seen anything like it. Raw, wild power, crackling from her fingers and eyes. It saved both their lives, but it also nearly destroyed her. "You shouldn't have done that," Daniel whispered. "You almost burned yourself out." Zura blinked slowly. Her voice was a whisper. "They were going to kill you." Daniel placed a fresh blanket over her. "You didn't have to protect me. I'm the one who brought you into this fight." Her lips moved gently. "I had to. You cared." She closed her eyes, resting. Daniel leaned back and stared at the ceiling, now cracked from the blast. He had so many questions, but one had been echoing since the fight. Who was she? The next morning, the storm had passed completely. Daniel dragged the hunters' bodies far from the cabin and buried them in snow. Their gear was broken. Their ship had never landed. Only drones had come close. Whoever sent them would know they failed. He returned to the cabin and found Zura sitting up, slowly drinking warm broth. Her silver eyes followed him as he entered. "You're moving better," he said. She gave a soft nod. He sat across from her. "Zura, is that really your name?" She paused, then looked down. "No," she said quietly. "It was the name I gave myself after I escaped." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What's your real name?" She hesitated, then whispered something. Soft, musical in her native tongue. It didn't sound like a name, it sounded like a melody. He tried to repeat it clumsily. "Say it again?" She smiled for the first time in days. "You can call me Zuriel. It is close." Daniel nodded. "Zuriel, that's beautiful." She looked at the floor. "It was my name before the chains, before they took everything." "Tell me," Daniel said gently. "What happened to you?" She looked out the cracked window, her eyes far away. "My people are rare," she began. "We are born with light inside us, a gift. But that light makes us valuable to the syndicate. They take us young, use our energy, train us to be weapons. I was one of the few who escaped before I broke." Daniel leaned in. "You were a child?" She nodded. "I was small. They put a crown on my head, called me Source. But it wasn't a throne. It was a cage." Her voice cracked. "I ran, hid in the ice, but they found me again, over and over." Daniel felt rage burn in his chest. "They treated you like fuel." "I was not a person to them, just power." She looked up at him, tears gathering. "But you gave me soup, fire, a blanket. You didn't even know my name." Daniel smiled gently. "You didn't need to earn kindness, Zuriel." She reached across the space between them and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm now. "I never met someone like you," she said. "Not in all the stars." That night, Daniel made repairs to the cabin, reinforced the walls, checked the old scanners. He knew more would come, but not yet. For now, there was peace. Zuriel sat near the fire, humming softly to herself. The melody was strange, but calming. It sounded like memories. Daniel brought her a small gift, an old book, filled with pictures of Earth and stories in simple language. "I thought you'd like to see where I came from," he said. She opened it slowly, staring at the oceans, forests, animals. "Your world has so much green," she whispered. "Mine was full of light, but no freedom." Daniel chuckled. "We don't have much freedom either, but at least we have coffee." Zuriel laughed, a soft, musical laugh that filled the room with warmth. For the first time, she looked like she belonged there, but then her eyes grew serious again. "Daniel, they won't stop. The hunters, the syndicate, they always send more." "I know," he said, "but I'm not sending you away." "You'll fight for me?" she asked. He stood. "No, I'll fight with you." Zuriel stood slowly too. "Then I will learn to control my light, not just to destroy, but to protect." They stood side by side in the cabin, shadows dancing across their faces, firelight glowing behind them. They were no longer strangers. They were something more. The final stand. The snow was falling again, soft and quiet. But inside the cabin, the air was full of tension. Zuriel stood in front of the fire, her hands open, eyes closed. Small sparks of blue light danced across her skin. Her breathing was steady, focused. For days she had practiced with Daniel's help, learning to guide the light inside her instead of letting it explode out. Daniel stood nearby, building traps, Wiring old parts into motion sensors, he wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic. But now he was preparing for war. The alert beeped just after sunset. A ship had entered low orbit. Zuriel opened her eyes. "They're here," she whispered. That night they didn't sleep. The ship landed in the valley to the east, out of sight, but close. It was a dark, curved vessel, shaped like a claw, silent and deadly. 5 shadows moved from it, larger hunters this time. Heavier armor, smarter weapons. Zuriel stood beside Daniel as they watched from a ridge. "They don't want to capture me anymore," she said softly. "They want to erase me." Daniel looked at her. "Then we don't give them the chance." She glanced down. "You could still run," he smirked. "Not a chance." Back at the cabin, they set the last of the traps. Tripwires hidden under snow. Explosive charges made from old mining tools. Lights rigged to blind and confuse. Zuriel stood at the door as Daniel adjusted the last wire. "You've changed," he said. She turned. "How?" "When I found you, you were broken. Now you look like fire." She smiled. "Because I finally have something worth protecting." The first explosion came just before dawn. A trap went off near the fence line. Then a second. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Zuriel's hands glowed softly. Then came the sound of metal boots in snow. The hunters had arrived. The first one entered from the side, slicing through the wall with a plasma blade. Daniel fired, hitting him in the chest. The armor cracked, and Zuriel finished the job, sending a pulse of light that threw him out of the cabin like a rag doll. The second and third attacked from above, dropping from the roof. Daniel rolled and hit a hidden button. A trapdoor opened beneath one of them, sending him crashing into a pit of scrap metal. Zuriel turned to the last attacker. This one was different. Taller, smarter. His mask glowed gold. The commander. "You should have stayed in chains," he growled. Zuriel stepped forward. Her light swirled around her hands like fire and smoke. "I'd rather burn," she said. He raised his weapon, but she was faster. With a scream, she sent a beam of pure energy into his chest. He staggered, but didn't fall. His armor absorbed part of the blast. He charged forward and slammed her into the wall. Daniel ran to help but was knocked aside. Zuriel struggled beneath the commander's weight. "You are just a failed experiment," he hissed. Zuriel's eyes glowed brighter than ever before. "I am free." The burst of power that followed shook the entire cabin. The commander flew backward and hit the far wall with a loud crash. His armor shattered. He didn't move again. Silence. Zuriel fell to her knees, gasping. Daniel crawled to her, bleeding from a cut above his eye. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "I'm not used to this much power." "You used it well." When the sun finally rose, the snow was red and black from the fight. The traps were destroyed, the cabin damaged, but they were alive. Daniel sat on the steps holding a warm drink. Zuriel sat beside him, wrapped in a thick coat, her hair glowing faintly in the light. "You think more will come?" Daniel asked. Zuriel shook her head. "Not for a while. That commander was important, they'll need time." Daniel nodded. "Then we rebuild." She looked at him. "Together?" "Always." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think I was born for pain," she whispered. "But now, I think I was born to meet you." Daniel smiled, and for the first time in years, the snow felt warm. She won't let go. The cabin stood quiet now. Snow rested gently on the roof, covering the broken spots from the battle days ago. Smoke rose from the chimney again, not from fire or explosions, but from breakfast. Peace had returned. Inside, the light of the fireplace danced on wooden walls. Tools were neatly hung, blankets were folded. A new window patched from scrap glass let sunlight into the room. Daniel poured hot tea into 2 metal cups. Zuriel sat at the table, wrapped in a soft coat, her hair loose, silver strands catching the light. She looked different now, healthier, stronger, happier, but most of all, free. Daniel sat across from her and placed the tea in front of her. She smiled, still learning how to do it naturally. "You fix everything," she said gently. He smiled back. "I'm a mechanic. I fix things. But you fixed the hardest part." She tilted her head. "What's that?" "My heart." Zuriel looked away shyly, the faint glow on her cheeks showing her emotions better than words. Later that day, they went outside. The world was quiet again. No hunters, no drones. Just snow, trees, and the sound of wind. Daniel showed her how to build a new fence. Zuriel watched closely, asking questions, copying his movements. She was learning fast. "Next, I'll teach you how to cook without setting things on fire," he joked. "I only burned 2 pots," she said, pretending to be angry. They both laughed. It felt like home. That night they sat by the fire. Zuriel had braided her hair in a new way. Daniel wore his cleanest shirt, though it still had oil stains. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. Not because he was afraid to, but because he didn't want the moment to end. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked quietly. Daniel took a deep breath. "Sometimes, but not like I thought I would." "Why?" "Because Earth didn't have you." She lifted her head. "And now?" He turned to face her. "Now I never want to go back." Zuriel held his hand, squeezing it gently. "When I was a prisoner, I used to dream about snow," she said. "I imagined it would be cold but safe, pure." "And was it?" he asked. She nodded. "It tried to kill me, but you found me inside it. I didn't know what I was doing," Daniel said. "I just couldn't leave you." "I'm glad you didn't." She looked down. Her voice was soft. "Even now, part of me is still scared." He leaned in. "Why?" "Because this feels too good," she said. "I'm afraid it will go away." Daniel cupped her cheek with his hand. "It won't. Not if we build it stronger every day." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the unfamiliar weight of love. Then she said something Daniel didn't expect. "I want to stay here with you always," he smiled. "Then stay." From that night on, Zuriel never let go. Not out of fear, but out of choice. When Daniel worked outside, she brought him tools. When he was tired, she made soup. Yes, sometimes too salty, but always made with care. And when nightmares came, she would whisper her songs from long ago, calming them both. They didn't talk about the syndicate much anymore, but they both knew. If danger came again, they would face it together, not as a rescuer and rescued, but as something more. Weeks passed, then months. Spring came late on that frozen world, but it came. Green started to peek from beneath the snow. The air warmed, and one morning Daniel woke to the smell of something new. Bread. Real bread. He rushed to the kitchen. Zuriel stood proudly holding a loaf, slightly burned on one side. "I followed your book," she said. Daniel laughed. "You made bread?" "I tried 5 times. It's perfect," she smiled. "You said I could learn anything." He hugged her tightly. "I meant it." And still, she didn't let go. In a world full of silence, snow, and stars, 2 souls, who once had nothing, now had everything, because one chose to reach out and the other never let go.